All right. Assalamu alaikum and peace and greetings to all the friends. It is a joy to have you back. We have had a hiatus from our conversations on the divine names, and it's beautiful to resume this journey together. If you have been with us since the very beginning, welcome back. And if you are joining us for the first time today, well, we're honored to have you. There's a lovely quote that I want to begin with, just to help us be oriented about this invitation to immerse ourselves in the divine names, in the Asma al-Husna, the beautiful and lovely names of God. And this quote is from Pir Murshid, Hazrat Inayat Khan. It comes in the Vadan. It is thee, beloved, whom I see in all names and forms. It is thee, beloved, whom I see in all names and forms. And in fact, what we are doing with these 100 names of God is to see the impression that they leave on our hearts as we sit with them for a period of time. We've started the journey. We have gone through names like Rahman and Rahim. And now we are in a section today where some of these divine names occur in pairs. So today we're going to be talking about Al-Khafid, Al-Rafi'. God is the one who humbles, and God is the one that elevates. Al-Mu'idh, Al-Mudhil, God is the one who honors, and God is the one who lowers. As-Sami'a, God is the hearer, the listener. Yes, we are talking about the qualities of God. These are traditional names that have been a focus of Sufi practice for centuries. Many of them come from the Quran or the teachings of the Prophet. But it is not exclusively about God. These are, in a sense, a portal, an opening towards God. And again, to remember the teachings of Pir Murshid, Hazrat Inayat Khan, the contemplative heart reflects the divine qualities. The contemplative heart reflects the divine qualities. So in a sense, that's what we are trying to do, is to cultivate that contemplative heart, a heart that is characterized by contemplation and serve as a mirror for these qualities of God. We're very joyful and honored, as always, to have our teachers, Naima and Zamurrud, who you will hear from next. And but let us begin with these two divine qualities that I'll have the joy of sharing with you a little bit. Khafid and Rafi'. You hear translations like the abaser, the debaser for Khafid. Sometimes friends like a halwa, translated as the humbler, the one who softens. And for Rafit, we hear the exalter. And again, from Arzu Halwa, the uplifter. We used to translate that as the elevator, but then I think in American English, that has a slightly different connotation. So we don't use elevator anymore. I want to begin with a wonderful story, and this will help guide us in the conversation about many of these pairs. And it comes from this text, Rauhul Arwah, the repose of the realm of spirit. And in this story, we are told that when the Almighty had begun the process of creating the human, and the breath of God had been breathed into us, that God turns towards all of the creatures who had been created before. God turns to the throne of God, the Arsh, and God turns to heaven and to hellfire. And what Sam'ani, this is one of our classic commentaries on the names of God, says, is that God creates the throne and puts the throne in charge of those angels who've been brought closest to God. Heaven has been created and placed under the care of Rizwan, the angel in charge of heaven. And likewise, hellfire has been created and placed in charge of an angel named Malik. Then God creates the human, and in particular, the heart of the human. And when all of these angels see the heart of the human, well, they get very excited because they've never seen something quite so beautiful, so luminous. So they're each vying, they're competing to see who can be allowed to keep the company of the heart of the human. And Rizwan, the angel who is in charge of heaven, says, oh, give me this human heart, because in it is the wine of intimacy and the drink of holiness. Malik, the angel in charge of hell, says, give this to me, because I know what to do with fire. And the heart of the human has the fire of love. And those angels brought close to God and in charge of the throne say, well, we know what to do with the elevated throne of love and the wide open plains of affection. But the Lord on high refuses all of them and says, this one is mine. The human belongs to me, and al-qulub bayna asbi'ain, the heart of the human is going to be held between my two fingers. the heart of the human is going to be held between my two fingers. Many Sufis have commented on the notion, the realization that the word heart, qalb, means something that changes, something that turns over. And they talk about how these, if you would, two fingers of God are constantly turning us over and over. So what are these two fingers? Well, not fingers as we have them, but they talk about this as the qualities of God that we experience as majesty, Jalal, and the qualities that we experience as beauty and mercy, Jamal. Sages like Ibn Arabi go back to these kinds of sayings in reminding us that God works with both hands, that the divine is the same who abases us and the same who exalts us. There is one force, one prime mover in the universe. It is we as humans who experience things in these contradictory ways. These names, Khafid, Rafi, Mu'izz, Mudhil, they all have something to do with this comprehensive, all-pervading sense of God. It is God who sends us joy and God who sends us grief and then comforts us through that grief. We do not live in a Manichaean universe where goodness comes from God and challenges come from the devil. No, it's a more unitive experience. But as I think you might hear from my dear friend and teacher Zumurrud, in thinking about these names, it is very good to experience a sense of humility. Think about if you were to go and visit someone who is struggling with a serious illness, perhaps cancer. What is it that we would want to say to them? I think maybe the most beautiful thing that one can do is to witness their pain. Words like, well, yes, I realize that you're suffering from cancer, but the same God who sent you health is now sending you cancer. That would come across as quite callous and cruel. Someone who is dealing with war or homelessness or racism. Do we just want to go up to them and say to them, yes, this abasement that you're experiencing is also the work of God? Maybe not. Maybe not. So I at least find that it's useful to look at these pairs of names as how we experience our own journey on the path. rather than something that we would readily, easily want to share with somebody else. There's that sense of humility that is involved. One of the North African Sufis, Ahmad ibn Ajiba, puts it really beautifully. He says, yes, God is the one who uplifts you, and God is the one who abases you, but God only uplifts the heart. And God only humbles the ego. There is something in us that has to be humbled. And the heart can be elevated. With some of these names, Al-Khafid, the abaser, the humbler, well, those are some of the kinds of names that you probably don't want to do a practice of zikr on your own. You always want to have it in balance, and to do so under the supervision of a guide. And how lovely it is when you look at the ways that the Quran or the prophets or these illuminated sages have elucidated, opened up these meanings. So, for example, Al-Khafid as a divine name is not used in the Quran. 3 out of the 4 instances where the root kha, fa, da is used in the Quran, it's in this beautiful expression to lower the wing of humility. To lower the wing of humility. That has a really different sound to it than the abaser. So sometimes we need commentary. The Quran talks about in this beautiful passage a way that we should relate to our parents. وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Lower the wing of humility towards your parents in kindness, and say to God, have mercy on them, just as they cared for me when I was little. Lower the wing of humility towards your parents, show them mercy, and pray to God, oh God, have mercy towards them as you have mercy towards me. It's Maulana Rumi who, in one of his favorite metaphors, brings together Khafid and Rafid. So he has a poem in which he says, I'll read the Persian and then the translation. Hafiz است و رافع است این کردگار بی از این دو بر نیاید هیچ کار. So, God is the divine maker who abases and exalts. Without these two working together, no work is accomplished. God is the one who abases you and the one who elevates you. Without these two, nothing is done. And he goes on to talk about how the earth has been brought low and humble, and how the heavens, the sky, has been elevated. And it takes both of these to create the world. The Quran does have a lot more to say about the uplifting, the elevation. So we do a zikr, we do a chanting and invocation of the names of God. There's that well-known passage in the Quran that begins, many friends will know this, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Didn't we open up your heart for you? It's a beautiful, comforting passage for all the readers. And it goes on to say, وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. And we elevated for you your dhikr, your remembrance. It has a double meaning. We elevated the way people remember you, but also when you do a dhikr, when you remember God, we lift that zikr all the way up to heaven. When it comes to that quality of lowering, there's that beautiful description of the Prophet that when he would walk, he would cast his glance towards the earth. He would cast his glance towards the earth. So there's something that is elevated towards the heavens, and there's something that is directed towards the earth. Let me end by reading one quick passage from Ibn Arabi. Sometimes these sages use that metaphor of the heart of the faithful is between the two fingers of God. And there's also the passage in which, after God has created the human, he orders Iblis, the being later on named as Satan, to bow down. And it refuses. And in the Quran, we are told, God says to Iblis, what prevented you from bowing down to the human whom I made with my own two hands? What is it that's keeping you from bowing down to the human whom I created with my two hands? And Ibn Arabi says the following, that the two hands represent these two aspects of the divine qualities. So I'll read this passage from Fusus. In this manner, God depicts himself as beautiful and majestic. All is ascribed to God and all of his names. He expressed each pair of qualities by his two hands, which turn from him toward the creation of the human. Let me pause here, perhaps as a contemplation. It would be useful for each of us to think about, when have there been times in our life that we feel like, at least in the worldly sense, that we have been elevated. We've had some measure of success. Do we attribute that to our hard work, or talent, sacrifice, luck, or that elevation comes to us from God? And likewise, I think all of us can think of times in our lives where we feel like we have been humbled, lowered, abased, fallen on our faces. What do we attribute that to? Dumb luck? A misfortune? Someone who's out to get you? And not speaking of anybody else other than ourselves, is there a way in which that being humbled could also be part of a two-handed plan of God to let us humble the ego and lift up the heart? Let me turn it over to my dear friends, Zumurrud and Naima.
Thank you so much, dear Omid. I feel like taking in a few moments of silence the presences which you introduced to us. And of course, there would be so many questions I would like to ask you and hear about from you. Just before, Naima, you said that we could easily spend the whole session, a whole day or a week on just one name or one pair of names. So you so beautifully already invoked that sacred mystery which these pairs of names like Hafid and Rafi' and Mu'is and Mudil reveal to us. And so we are turning now to these names which you already mentioned: Al-Mu'is, the honorer, and Al-Mudil, the dishonorer, the contrary, and literally the one who brings you low. And these names are also mentioned as a verb in the Quran. We find them in that passage which reads, وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. You honor whoever you wish, and you bring low who you wish. In your hands is the khair, the good. Surely you are most capable of everything. This passage in itself is worth meditating, contemplating for a long time, because it bears some secrets in it. But let us consider the name Mu'izz, al-Mu'izz. It is related to a name which we already heard about, Al-Aziz. And you mentioned and showed us that beautiful book by Sam'ani, The Repose of the Spirit. And there's a beautiful image that is invoked in connection to this name. He says, when the one wants to honor us, she gives us access to the carpet of secret whispering. The carpet of secret whispering. What does that mean? What is that carpet of secret whispering? Secret whispering is much more secret than those loud whispers which occasionally come from more outward voices in us and which appear as noise. But that secret whispering, how can we hear it? Imagine sitting on a carpet in the presence of the One. And actually, this is what we do in every prayer, sitting on the carpet in the presence of the One, turned toward the One, until there is no one there but the One. So sitting on the carpet of secret whispering, one enters a deep silence, becomes utterly still, and one becomes receptive to that voice in the innermost chamber of the heart. And there Al-Mu'izz entrusts you with its presence. In that intimacy, Al-Mu'izz leaves a trace, a light, if you wish so, a bliss, which is too great to be defined, It is so deep, so subtle, so real, that the only way to behold it is to become pervaded by Al-Mu'izz, to become Mu'izz yourself. On that carpet of secret whispering, Al-Mu'izz whispers you awake to who you truly are in God. There is no outward sign which could reveal that, and it cannot be announced. No one can tell you. That which Al-Mu'izz gives you cannot be given to you by whatever honor in the world. No initiation can give that to you, because you are already initiated to become a truly human being, a Khalifatullah fil Ard, a representative of God on earth. This is what we were honored by when we were created by God's hands, as Umid shared with us. And as a Khalifatullah fil Ard, it's an honor which is undeservable. It's a gift of an incomprehensible love. It's a trust. And if the beloved entrusted that to us, how do we treat others? What does it mean to take on that quality of Mu'izz? Sufis speak of the way of God, suluk, a manner which comes from the realization of and surrender to the one being. But I'm contradicting myself when I say one can't really put it into words. So let us much rather taste it. And the very sound, Mu'izz, Mu'izz, bears the secret that is entrusted to you on that carpet of secret whispering. Something touches you. And makes you awake to the reality of your being. So let us close the eyes and imagine we're sitting on that carpet of secret whispering in the intimacy of the presence of the one being. And we start hearing that invocation and join in. Ya Mu'ais, 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 Ya Mu'ais. And when you allow the one being to perfume and pervade you with that presence of Al-Mu'izz, then in your presence, others remember who they truly are. And God is also Al-Mudhil, the one who brings you low. Does God need to bring us low in order to assert himself of being great? No. That's how the small self distorts this divine quality. That's a beautiful image to contemplate on in the Holy Quran, which actually contains the name Rafi', which points in a direction when it says that God erected the heavens without pillars that we could see. And this has many, many layers of meaning. Books can be filled with it. But it also speaks to the way the one elevates, not by putting down another. And similarly, Al-Mudhil is not necessary for asserting that greatness. It has an even deeper message in it, a message of Inayatiyya, of loving kindness, loving concern. In the presence of Mu'ez, we realize that our heart is sacred. And our heart is sacred because it is between the two fingers. And about that same heart, it is said, God says that neither heaven nor earth embrace God, but the heart of the one who is devoted to God in love, devoted to me in love, says God, embraces me. So when we are ready to look to God in both Al-Mu'izz and Al-Mudhil, that makes our heart complete, and it deepens that mystery. But when the false, one could say the fake self, hijacks the heart or tries to do so, then Al-Mudhil comes to save you by overthrowing the small, pretentious self. There is a story where Jesus cleared the temple and threw out all idols, swept them away. And that is also what we do in Zikr when we say La ilaha. We joyfully sweep out all idols from the heart. So when the false self, the small self, has become pretentious, complacent, and idle, and forgotten its mission to serve the true self in the heart, then the one comes as Al-Mudil to re-establish a path to true happiness. That verse in the Quran tells us what the intention of Al-Mudil is. Biyadika al-khayr. In your hands is the good. The intention of Al-Mudil is not humiliation. It is the good. When Al-Mu'izz has whispered to you the secret of your being, and you do not forget, no one can humiliate you. When someone contempts you, abases you, treats you with objection, as long as you know that you are initiated by the One to be Khalifatullah fil Ard, they cannot humble you. But we do experience situations where hardship is so great, and we do witness even greater hardship of others. And can you imagine what that does when it even comes from someone who one trusts in? In that situation of despair, the One takes it on to be the source of that. So that we need not despair of our life, and we also need not humble ourselves by feeling resentment against the One who was the instrument of Al-Mudil. At the beginning of this course, we were lifted up by that tremendous message that Ar-Rahman encompasses all. So Al-Mudil means that Ar-Rahman does not leave us alone. even when we make such experiences. And when we humble ourselves by raising the narrow, the small ego, and oppressing the true self, then Al-Mudil smashes that false self, so that we can be happy again in the unfoldment of a truer self. Al-Mudil is a very sacred name. It's almost too sacred to invoke unless this presence is here. So we will not call it together here, but maybe just one thought I'll share before I pass on to Naima. We heard that after Al-Khafid comes Al-Rafi', and here Al-Mudil comes first and then Al-Mu'ais. Al-Mu'ais comes first and then Al-Mudil. Al-Mudil comes after Al-Mu'ais. Why? Because the honorer will not allow us to rescind the honor that we have in God. What a love is this? What a selfless love. But the one takes it on to even be Al-Mudil when it is for the purpose of realizing the true happiness of the soul. That we belong to the one. So it may even happen that when you experience in your life Al-Mudil, and Al-Mudil introduces him herself to you as one who is named by all the names, then that can even cast a light of hope. Tyranny is overthrown, and it is possible to build a beautiful world of beautiful people. And there is no greater beauty than the beauty of the one who is beauty and loves beauty and is named by all the most beautiful names. All of them are beautiful. Khafid and Rafi', Mu'ais and Mudil. And in a minute, in a second, Naima will introduce us to another beautiful name, one who makes all the difference and through whom we are enabled to really realize the names. But before we do, I want to ask my dear friends, Naima and Omid, to share an insight you have on Al-Mu'ais and Al-Mudil.
I don't think I have anything more to say. You so beautifully described each. And I'm just taking that all in. Omid, did you want to add?
Just that I very much look forward to that carpet of intimacy, that inshallah we can all be together, facing each other in presence of the One.
Both dear Omid and dear Zumarud shared two beautiful names each that are often not easy for us to come to terms with. And they so beautifully shared some of the pathways to understanding. And I so appreciate it. Thank you for your wisdom and knowledge and deep understanding, realization. The next name that we'll work with is Samir, which is often paired also with Basir, but we'll hold off on Basir until next time. And in the way that Zumarud led that contemplation, that little meditation on Mu'aiz and the listening within to guidance, to the inner presence, it was a beautiful bridge to this divine name. And as was said, these divine names certainly open up limitless portals. And with this divine name, I especially experienced that in preparation. Samir is the divine hearing. It is the one who hears, all hearing, sharp, keen hearing, vigorous, intense, attentive listening. Although it's also extremely receptive and responsive, as well as active. It is hearing everything deeply without limitation. Imagine that. All that there is to hear in detail and totality. The manifest and the unmanifest sound. You might hear God's signs, which become like guidance to you. Murshid often talks about the heart becomes an ear. Another way to listen. So let's think about these different ways to consider Al-Samir. First, the manifest aspect. So for this, I'm sure all of us are very aware of the sounds that we hear in life. You can just take a moment right now to listen to your own environment. What do you hear? Maybe you could hear something also of the natural world outside your door or window. But perhaps when you're walking in nature, you can hear some of those beautiful sounds. And this is a quote of Hazrat Inayat Khan. The sound of nature, which is continually heard through the wind and through the running water and through all things moving, becomes the greatest meditation there could be if one gave attention to it, which develops wonderful realization by which one receives the fullest benefit which comes from the sounds around one. And in this last year, I had the opportunity to learn about Bernie Krause. He wrote a book along with the visual arts group called The Great Animal Orchestra. Bernie Krause is an environmentalist and a musician, and he goes to places in the wild all around the world and records. And at first, when he was beginning, he recorded just the sound of a bird. And then he realized that wasn't enough for him. So then he began to record the sound, the symphony of the natural world, all of it at once. So in those soundscapes, as he calls them, you can hear the low voices of, say, a jaguar even, or the medium voice of a frog, the higher sounds of insects, the sounds of birds, all at once, and the importance of each of these sounds in the soundscape. It was like a symphony to him. And the more he heard and the more he listened, the more he understood and the more he realized about the connection of all life. So I'd like to read a couple of quotes by him. I grew up in a world that typically assessed everything from what we see. But I have learned that a fuller understanding can be realized from what we hear. Natural soundscapes are the signature voices of the natural world. As we hear them, we are endowed with a more complete story of life and the world in which it exists. Every now and then, my ear catches a moment that can never be successfully reduced to words. The power of its expression is, at the same time, so great and elusive. Since it is always unexpected, I have to listen intently if nothing is to be missed. For I know that when a soundscape is healthy and I am able to be present within it, I become instantly calmed and finally at peace. So this is the power of the natural world. Perhaps you've gone on retreat in nature or walked in nature, and as you feel the vibration of the peacefulness around you, you hear more. You hear the natural world around you speaking to you. You might sit at a stream and listen to that stream, and after a while you begin to hear different notes that stream is making, even to the point where you hear the being who protects that stream singing as part of its chorus. In terms of the manifest, we can hear our heartbeat sometimes. We can listen when we're in deep silence. We can hear our heartbeat. And Murshid talked about listening to the heartbeat as a practice. And of course, listening to the people around us. And of course, when we listen to our friends, when we're speaking with them, when they're speaking with us, how much can we really listen? How much can we really stop our minds and really listen to what they're saying? So often we're jumping into what we're thinking, how we're responding. But it's always such a blessing when we can stop and truly listen and give our friend the space just to be and to share. Not to fix it, not to even add anything more. But then, of course, it's always lovely when there is also that opportunity to share back and forth, that dialogue, that conversation of the heart. Listening to the heart. And the Sufis have what's called the Sema or the Sama. That's when we gather and sing the divine names of God or remembrance through zikr. And we connect with the divine presence, with the One. I'd like to read a quote of Pir Ziya's. Pir Ziya especially underscores the seven, what's called the seven leading names, of which Samir is one of them. And this is some text he wrote related to this divine name. Walk in nature and listen to the zikr of the elements, the minerals, the plants, and animals. Shah Kalimullah Jahanabadi says, there is an individual zikr for everything extant, everything in existence. Everything has its zikr. In the manuals of meditation of the classical Sufis, there are chapters devoted to the zikrs of birds. Some of the zikrs we do were learned from the birds. Sufis would go out into the desert and listen to the sounds of animals. They would imitate those sounds in their zikrs. That is how they learned. So moving on to the unmanifest sound, the inner listening. And Murshid describes the process of becoming and describing each of us as a vibration. Like from the Bible, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. That word is another way of saying vibration or sound. When we listen within, we can attune to the innermost sounds called the music of the spheres, or symphony of the soul, or the Anahad Sarmad. Murshid called this music life itself, and Pir Vilayat said that all of the manifest world is a crystallization of the world of vibration. And Murshid went on to talk about different sounds that one would hear in the inner realms. And this is related to a very advanced practice that the Sufis do called shugal or shagal. And these inner sounds, when we listen, when we deeply listen, can sound like the buzzing of bees or the ringing of bells, or the fluttering of leaves, or the running of water. The sound of veena, the cooing of the wind, the crashing of the thunder, the music of the spheres, the song of the angels, and many other ways. And when we connect the unmanifest with the manifest, we listen to our inner guidance, to intuition, how we receive guidance. So we may be visual people when we turn deeply to put the question that we might have in the lap of the beloved. We may hear that response in the silence. It may come as a visual image or as something that we hear, or a wazifa, or it may come as a feeling in one of our latayif, in our gut, in our heart. We might feel that response, that guidance. Murshid says, when the water is still, it takes a clear reflection. And when our atmosphere is still, then we hear the voice which is constantly coming to the heart of every person. We are looking for guidance. We all of us search for truth. We search for the mystery. The mystery is in ourselves. The guidance is in our souls. So I'd like to stop right now and take a moment to listen, just in this silence right now. And perhaps there is a question you wish to put into the lap of the beloved and hear a response. So we'll begin it with saying the words, the divine name, Ya Samir. Ya Samir, 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 Ya Samir. Listening in the silence. So maybe you can bring this state of silence with you after this class and listen. So perhaps bring Omid and Zumrud onto the screen with me. If there's any word or two that you may have around this beautiful divine name.
I am listening.
I think if the listening is a good enough name for the Almighty Beloved, it is surely a good enough name for us.
So thank you everyone for joining us, and we so appreciate your presence. We feel your presence. We are delighted to be sharing these divine names with all of you, and we'll complete our class with the prayer for the universal. O thou who art the maker, molder, and builder of the universe, build with thine own hands the universal, our temple, for thy divine message of love, harmony, and beauty. Amen. Thank you, everyone.